From the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University, this is Writer's Talk. I'm Doug Dangler. I'm here at the Ohioana Book Festival with Karen Harper, and we are talking about her books, which she has many of here. And we've talked about before. We did a podcast a couple years ago when you were here. So what's new, what's changed in the last 2 years, and what new books do you have?
Well, actually, I hit a real milestone this last month. I have been published since 1982, so I hit, quite a few years published.
12,
and I actually
13.
hit 50 published novels, so
Wow.
that's really, it's sobering to me. I didn't realize. You just go along and work at what you're doing, I'm writing for two different publishing companies right now, and I'm writing two very different things. I'm writing historical novels, such as The Queen's Governess, that's Tudor England,
Okay.
and Mr. Shakespeare, which is in also Elizabethan England, was out in paper this year. And I'm excited about this book because the Choose to Read Ohio selected this book as one of their 5 fiction books for this year.
Okay.
So I'm doing, for Penguin USA, I'm doing these historical novels based on real women. Always take a real woman, research her life. She has to have certain things going for her, such as she was important somehow at the court, or had a really interesting life. Has to have a happy ending. I still don't do, although I guess Mr. Shakespeare was an unhappy ending because he died before she did. And then for another publisher, Mira Books, I'm writing contemporary suspense.
Okay.
And writing about one book a year for them. And I brought this one because it's set in Ohio Amish country.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I'm into right now, is setting books in Ohio Amish country. I've already done 4. A 3-book series that has Dark in the title. We got Dark Road Home, Dark Harvest, and Dark Angel.
Well, after 50 books, you're going to have to reuse some words and titles, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
Well, and there's certain ones for, this is suspense novel, so you got to have something that's a little scary that's suggested in it. And I just signed a contract with this same publisher to do a trilogy of Ohio Amish books again.
Okay.
So that's fun.
All right, so tell me how, when you're switching back and forth between the dark and the light, I guess, when you sit down to write these, do you have different processes to do them? Do you have different thoughts in terms of, all right, this one has these genre limitations, or this one doesn't have that, and I can do however I want to work on it? What's your process?
Well, one of the big differences is the voice. The author's voice with the Tudor books is very, very different. It's more antique. You've got longer sentences. Of course, you've got completely different vocabulary. You have researched the culture, which is different from ours. Not that the Amish culture isn't different from ours. That doesn't change. I'm always doing research before I write.
Do you do research with the Amish in terms of going down to Amish country, observing them, talking to them? How open are they with that?
That's a great question. When I first did my Amish books, it was difficult to break in a way. I went to Berlin, Ohio, where Helping Hands Quilt Shop, I believe it's called, kind of stayed around there, explained to some of the women quilters what I was doing. I do the Buckeye Book Fair every year. I don't know if you're familiar with that, in Worcester, Ohio, in November. Amish come into that, and I talked to a few of them, he calls himself a timber framer, he's a barn builder. And he gave me some advice on who to go visit. He gave me his card. Go visit this person. They'll show you their barn.
Oh, okay.
And, I mean, you get in with a few of them, and if they learn that you are not writing satire, not writing comedy, that you respect them and are interested in them, they will open up somewhat.
Have you taken any of the books to them? Do you get any feedback from them about your portrayal, or is that a bridge you have to
I have
cross?
not given them the books per se, but they have bought them when they've come into the Buckeye Book Fair. And I knew that one actually was the bishop and his wife,
Oh.
And the next year they came back and I was like, what are they going to say? But they really did not say anything negative and bought another one. So I figured it might be okay,
Right.
The Amish are very, very popular right now. I think the more America has dysfunctional families that break up, the more people leave their faith. The Amish, old-fashioned traditional Amish, look very intriguing to them because they have those things going for them.
Are they gaining in number by any chance?
They have such large families that they are slightly gaining. even though they do lose about a third of their kids to the world these days.
Oh,
you know,
I see.
But if you have a family of 10 and you lose 3 of them on the average,
You're
you
still
know, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a very different kind of research than you do for something like Mr. Shakespeare.
Oh, absolutely. And when I'm doing the contemporary books, like you suggested, you can talk to live people, which is very, very helpful. And usually most people are very willing to share their career or whatever.
For these books and for this
Yeah,
books,
absolutely.
But for these books, you're talking to, how do you do your research? If you're going to talk
Well,
to
I've been
live
to
people-
England a lot,
Okay.
visited all the places that I write about, and I've taught English for years. You know, at Ohio State, I got a master's in English Lit, and studied medieval and British literature when I was in grad school at Ohio State.
Do you do a lot of British accents at parties, and you do
No,
the
but I
medieval
have
speech?
a 30-pound Elizabethan gown I wear to events sometimes that someone who makes bridal gowns made for me. So it's got the big double sleeves, the huge, farthingale under the skirts.
Is that what
and
you wear when you
everything.
wait these books?
Actually
you
not.
sit there.
Are you
That
crazy?
would be
No.
a much better story though if you had in
yeah.
Prithee,
You can't sit down well in it. I would have to write like Hemingway standing up, I think, if I
Okay.
did that. Yeah.
All right. So then, what's your next book? What are you working on now that's not yet out?
All right. Well, in the historical novels, I have just finished and am revising this week. I
You
often
say that with a bit of
yes.
distaste.
Why did I leave being an English teacher where I told students to revise when now I'm being told to revise?
Right.
Who knows? It's called The Irish Princess. It's also Tudor England. It's about the Fitzgerald family. One of the reasons John Fitzgerald Kennedy always kept his middle name was the Fitzgeralds were the uncrowned kings of Ireland.
Oh, okay.
And so anyone Irish would have registered with them somewhat. So that'll be out next February in time for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, okay.
Publishers are always thinking what will work here in
Are
the way
you going
of
to
publicity.
go a big St. Patrick's Day party
I would love to.
in your Tudor gown
I would love to
mix it up?
That would be good. I'd have to make it green, though it's not green. So
Oh.
anyway, yeah. And then I have just signed a contract, as I think I mentioned, to do 3 more Ohio Amish settings with my contemporary publisher.
So how do you say, okay, I think this makes sense within the Amish tradition. Here's what I'd really like to do with the next Amish story. I'm curious if there's a different selection process for you mentally than with the Tudors, where you can go back and look at these as historical figures and say, I want to fit this particular historical figure, and that creates a certain kind of constraint.
Yes.
But not necessarily
There's
for
a
these Amish.
structure or a framework that I use for the historical novels that I don't use for the contemporaries. I'm much freer in my plots for the contemporary books because I've hooked this on a real woman's life. And Mr. Shakespeare, for example, anything I could find out about William Shakespeare was not changed. Luckily, there were a few periods in his life that are foggy or mysterious that I could,
Right. And that's how we
fictionalize
get
somewhat.
Shakespeare in
But-
Love and things
yeah,
like that.
exactly.
Right.
But the structure of the historical books is history. I mean, anything I can find, I don't change. Whereas the plots for the Amish can be very, very freewheeling, so to speak. But I do try to base them on reality. I wrote one the one I'm writing right now is on barn arsons. People have burned Amish barns. And so I've kind of used that as the plot for Into the Fire.
Okay.
So,
Well,
works
that-
different ways.
Without giving the ending away, you create a character that is burning the barns, right?
Right.
And it must be a difficult or interesting, I suppose, method to come up with what motivates somebody. And so you
Absolutely.
do research.
And I've
into
done one
this.
other arson book about 5
I'm
years ago.
noticing a trend
Very
here.
interesting.
It's frightening. Why? So how did you get into that? Do you look at police procedurals?
Well, I have a
you
nephew
look-
who's a fireman, which I suppose gets me thinking about it somewhat.
Okay, so you suspect the
But
nephew.
these, like Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather, said nothing's interesting but trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So for each of the suspense books, I need to have a kidnapping, a murder, a crime.
Mm-hmm.
And arson is, to me, a fascinating crime. Why would someone do that? It's really compelling.
Okay, and we'll have to read the book to find out your
Absolutely.
reasons for why.
Yeah.
Sorry, she's not going to give anything away. Well, Karen Harper, thank you very much for talking to us today again. 2 years later, maybe in another 2 years or whatever
Well,
you'll
hopefully
have.
next year.
You'll
never
have
know.
like 53, 54,
Yes.
55.
Yeah. And I would just like to say for this also that the Ohio State University has all my author's collection of papers and books in rare books and manuscripts in the main library.
Excellent. Right. And you've seen the new library.
I was on the committee to help build it.
So
my
yes.
husband and I have a plaque up there on the second floor by the president's portraits. So we're very proud of the new library.
I will have to go look for that. But thank you very much,
Thank
Karen
you.
Harper, for coming to talk
Thank
to us
you.
today.
Good questions.
And from the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University, this is Doug Dangler saying, keep writing. All right.
If you see Gordon's picture,